When was the last time a new knife design was released that truly piqued your interest? How's it going, everybody? I'm Rollshambo, the connoisseur and collector of all things sharp and shiny, and in my hands is a box that contains a knife that truly piqued my interest. And by the way, if you have an answer in mind, make sure to smack the like button and let me know in the comment section down below, what exactly was it? When was it released? And did you end up buying that? Today we're talking about a brand new offering from Winterblade. And Winterblade is known for making some absolutely phenomenal, innovative designs that are just out of this world different. What makes this one so cool is that it's different from Brian Winter's other designs as well. So it's not just new to us, it's also new to his lineup. And I could go on and on about it, but I'd rather just show you. Let's go ahead and check out the Winterblade Severn. How's it going, everybody? As you can tell, I'm so excited to get into this box. And, you know, I recorded this before, but my microphone was muted. So here we are. And I gotta say that unboxing this knife was one of the highlights, if not the highlight of my week, because I saw it come out on Instagram on a Tuesday. I was browsing Instagram when I probably should have been working. And there it was, out of nowhere, with no warning. Winterblade has come out with a new design, and this design will be available for pre-order November 22nd at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That means that you'll be able to go ahead and put your name on one of these, and trust me when I say, you might want to do that if you decide that you like this knife, because typically speaking, the pre-orders come, they go, they sell out, and then you're left wondering if you missed out. So that's what I'm here to do today. I'm here to talk about this knife and maybe help you make that decision, whether it's a yay or a nay. Maybe you just want to check out a new cool prototype. Shout out to Brian Winters for lending me this Severn prototype. This is the Winterblade Severn. Now, for you numbers nerds out there, the overall length is going to be coming in at 7 3/4 inches with a 3 1/4 inch blade. The weight is going to depend entirely upon which handle scale material you go with. If you get one in titanium, it'll come in at 4.5 ounces. If you get one in aluminum, 3.8 ounces. And if you get a G10 version, it'll be 3.5 ounces. On this specific prototype, we've got titanium handle scales with an M390 blade, although you should be able to actually get one in either MagnaCut M390 or even 14C28N, which I think is pretty damn cool, because it means that if you want to get a less expensive version, those should also be available. The lock type might look like a crossbar Axis style lock, but in fact it is not, because unlike Axis locks that use an Omega spring, this one uses a compressed coil spring, which is awesome, because if you have any experience with Omega springs, you know that they are often not super reliable and they can feel a little bit mushy. Now, aside from that, it also has a new feature from Winterblade called the Stealth Lock. And, you know, fans of the Demko 8020.5 might recognize that and say, whoa, hold on a minute. Did they steal Andrew Demko's Shark Lock? Guys, not at all. This is actuated similarly to a Shark Lock, but it is way beyond that. You see, when you press firmly into this stealth lock, which kind of hides in the frame of the knife, you'll notice that it actually moves the entire locking mechanism. This is not something that we've ever seen before, and that makes me pretty excited, because that means that you can open it like that, like you would an Axis lock, or with the stealth lock. And I want to make sure to mention this again: to access that, press firmly into the spine of the handle scales. Well, actually, it's kind of funny, because you don't even need to necessarily press firmly. You know, pressing lightly will bring it out as well. It's kind of cool because it is also spring loaded, and so it kind of flips in and out, but it will always rest back in that stealth position. So you don't have this, you know, unergonomical shark fin thing coming out. You could just kind of, you know, let it go away for the evening. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. I really enjoy how that is much more different. It's kind of like if you were to take an axis lock, a shark lock, and the ball bearing lock from Spyderco and just kind of, pair them all together. That's what you would get. But it's cool because whether you're a fan of crossbar locks or spine locks, you can actually just get them all at once. Now, how does that affect the lockup on the blade? The lockup is, there is no blade play, guys. That is less than zero blade play. It's perfectly locked in there. No left, right, up or down, no lock rock. Everything is fit and finished perfectly. The handle scales have some nice contouring, and I like these extra angles that we see here, whether it's the flat right here or the flat right there or the flat right there. It all kind of lends to some pretty comfortable ergonomics, regardless of the fact that it does look like it may have been designed by a ruler at some points. The pocket clip is a 3D milled titanium pocket clip, and if you get one with the laser bacon on the blade, you can actually have laser bacon on the pocket clip as well. Aesthetically speaking, I do like the fact that that matches. Now, you might be saying, well, that's all well and good, but what if I'm a left-handed user? What if I go southpaw? Yeah, the pocket clip is in fact reversible. And that's one of the things about this design that I really think is cool. Everything about it is meant to be used whether you are left or right-handed. And each side, each handle scale side is exactly the same minus the pocket clip. It says Severn on this side, it says Severn on this side. And by the way, I don't really know what Severn is. Maybe I'll look it up after I record the video. If it pops up on the screen, that's how you know. We don't have a traditional finger choil here, and I'm not even sure if that is meant to be a finger choil, but you can, in fact, use it as such. It's kind of a trigger pull back here, but it's also primarily there to tell you that you're never going to run into that plunge grind if you decide to sharpen the blade. Furthermore, it has a single-sided thumb stud, but just like with everything else, you can in fact switch it to the other side. It has this little metal post in here, and then the silver ring is a magnet. And so if you pop out this metal post, which you can do if you just place some pressure on the backside here, it'll start to pop it out, and then you can use or sacrifice your fingernails to, pull it out. You can actually swap it to the other side. Now, if you don't feel like doing that, or maybe you have a bad nail biting problem, you can use something like a Torx bit, and it will actually go ahead and pop out that pin like so. And as you can see, this magnet will swap over to the other side. Ipso facto, you can change the positioning of the thumb stud, or you could take it off completely. There's plenty of people out there that are like, listen, I don't really care for thumb studs. I don't want it to interrupt the design of the blade. So if you're okay with a small hole there, you could just take it out completely. Now, I wouldn't do that because I actually do like the idea and the design behind the magnetic thumb stud. And it's also an homage to Winterblade because their slogan is magnetic EDC. And I've got to mention that thumb stud is the only part of this knife that is magnetic. Nothing else about this knife is magnetic. Let's go ahead and do some quick comparisons. First up, we'll go ahead and compare against the Winterblade Mirage. Now, I love this knife. This is my Mirage. It is, in fact, magnet assisted. It's kind of like a magnet axis lock, but not really. And it's bananas. I've already reviewed this knife, and if you want to see my review on that, I will link it up in the corner. With that being said, you'll see that the Severn is actually bigger in every single way. It's longer, the handle scales are wider, it's got a bigger deployment window, and it actually has a thumb stud. As far as carry profile in the pocket goes, the Mirage is actually quite a bit thicker. So this is going to be a more pocket-friendly knife in the fact that the handle scales are not as thick. We do have some good pocketed milling on the inside, which does help reduce the weight. And I can tell you that without that pocketed milling, this would be pretty hefty with the titanium version. So I, for one, am glad that it's there. Something else that I think is pretty cool is that Brian has listened to the community because time and time again, we scream from the mountaintops give me T8 or give me something else. And in this case, he gave us T8 screws all the way around, and that also complements the single-sided captive pivot that's running on ceramic bearings. So how's the action? How's the deployment? Did you see that it has 4 deployment methods? The action on here is pretty good, despite the fact that this does not have a traditional detent. Now, if you look on the inside of this crossbar style kind of lock, you'll actually see the detent at work, because it works very similarly to what we see out of a shark lock or out of a regular axis lock, where the detent is this lock moving down, so the pressure of this lock pushing against the tang of the blade. I have a feeling that if you were to stress this spring, which I'm not going to suggest, but I think you could probably create a stronger detent. But is it necessary? No. The action on here is great. It doesn't feel mushy. Whether you are using the stealth lock to deploy it or whether you are using the thumb stud to deploy it. And did you hear that ting? Oh yeah, it does have a ting sometimes. And I'm going to put an asterisk next to that, and we'll get back to that in a bit. So you could use the thumb stud, you can use the deployment hole, you can use the locks or the stealth lock, and there you have it. You got 4 different deployment methods. Now, there are a few things on here that I'm not necessarily a huge fan of, and I'm going to go over what they are. Now, I don't know if this is just because it's a prototype, but I'm not a huge fan of having exposed threaded holes, because those tend to be the first things that get stuck and gunked up with crap in your pockets. You spill coffee on yourself and it seeps through your pockets and gunks up the threading. I would prefer to see a screw in there as kind of a placeholder. I know that, extra screws are not necessarily sightly to a lot of people, but I'd rather have that than an exposed hole. The next thing is that there is no jimping on the spine of this blade. Everything about this knife to me screams that you could absolutely 100% use this for your everyday cutting tasks. The lockup is really good, and that's a very strong lock. The blade stock is thin, not as thin as something like the TRM Shadow, but I'd say pretty dang close. And with the advent of being able to use it with 14C or Magna Cut, that means that this knife could 100% take a beating and come back for more. So for me, I would really like to see some jimping that kind of matches the length of that deployment window. Now, that's not a huge thing to a lot of people. Some people will listen to that and say, you're out of your freaking mind. It just interrupts the design language. But, I'd rather have more control than less when I'm handling a sharp object. Maybe that's just me. I'd like to see some jimping there, even if it does sacrifice a tiny bit of the aesthetics to make it happen. The next thing is not really a negative about this knife, because it's more of a wish list item. When it comes to the Mirage, something that I love about it is the fact that, yes, while it's magnet assisted, I actually really like the tactile feel of using the lock to engage it. I'm addicted to reverse flipping, and yet I can tell you that the feeling of the magnet lock or the mag lock is really, really freaking cool. And I think that there was an opportunity to make that happen here. I won't speak for Brian because I'm not an engineer. I do not know how to make those magnets work with the lock, but I can't help but wonder how cool it would have been if instead of compression springs, we had magnets in there. And it makes me wonder another thing too. Did he switch to a non-mag lock design because there was a ton of people out there terrified out of their minds about metal shavings making their way into the locking mechanism of their knife? I mean, how many of you actually work in a steel factory? Come on. But I do wonder, is it possible? Because while this is good, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with the way that this feels or actuates, it's actually really addictive to fidget with, I can't help but wonder if it would have been better had that been made with magnets. Is it possible? I don't know. I don't make knives, but I do think that that would have been pretty phenomenal. I think what this knife really achieves well is answering the concerns of the public. We said on the previous knives that we wanted T8, we got it. We said on the previous knives that we weren't sure how well magnets would last over time, especially if you work in environments that have metal shavings. Now we have one that is spring-based. We said, hey, you know what? Axis-style locks are great, but we don't like Omega springs. This one's an Axis-style lock without an Omega spring. We said, that's cool, but now we're into the spine-actuated locks, and it's got that. And that's really nifty. And oh yeah, we said that we like the ting, and I don't know if you can tell, but every so often I can get it to ting. It's not reliable. It kind of reminds me of that one friend that only seems to ever come over when you've got a fully stocked fridge of beer. And while it's nice to see them every now and then, we do wish that they would be a little bit more consistent. It blows my mind how many people have said things like, "Where's the ting? I have to hear the ting. The ting is what I'm here for. Show me it." And you know what? It's not here reliably. It's just there just enough to remind you that it's possible, but unlike with the Factor, it's not something that you can replicate each and every time. From what I can tell, it happens when you are deploying it lightly. If you deploy it with any kind of gusto, if you put some cayenne on it, you're going to hear the thwack of, you know, hitting that stop pin, but you're not going to hear the ting. It's there. It's there. The DNA is there. The innovation is there. Now, I don't know necessarily what this is going to cost. It wasn't included in the information that came with this knife, but 100% I'm glad that it exists, because it reflects the fact that designers in the community are moving forward. They're listening to our requests. They take that seriously, and they're not just coming out with more of the same, rebranding it as something different, and then expecting us to eat it and take out our wallets. And for that reason, I'm a huge fan of this, and I'll definitely be paying attention on the 22nd. But let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Are you intrigued by this new model from Winterblade? Are you going to pick one up? Will you be there on the 22nd, or is this a pass for you? Do you wish that it was more magnet assisted or had more magnets in it other than just the thumb studs? If you want to see more awesome knife content, guys, go ahead and click on one of the videos that pops up next.